I, Titus Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It's time to continue our discussion on Vampire the Masquerade in the World of Darkness. We were talking about the dramatic systems, in particular, combat lately. We're going to finish up with that today, and we'll be starting to move into the end of this book next time. So let's finish talking about combat, the combat complications to do with firearms. There's a few more I want to discuss with before we move into the melee and brawl complications. So, first one, taking aim. I could take an aim for something like the head or the heart or a specific part of the body. It increases my difficulty for whatever I'm using by 2. So it makes it more difficult to aim to an area. I can take multiple shots with a weapon. I would have to split my dice pool between all the shots I'm going to be taking. Now, for each shot beyond the first is a cumulative +1 to difficulty. So if my first shot would be a difficulty 6, second would be 7, third would be 8, and so on and so forth. And the maximum number of shots I can take is dependent on my firearm. I, of course, would be splitting the dice pool according to how I need to for the number of shots. I'm allowed to do 3-round bursts with this technique if I'm using those, but not with full auto, which I'm only able to use once a round. Let's talk about full auto. If I have a weapon that is able to use full auto, I can unload the clip from it and use all its bullets at once for one big old spray. I have to have at least the clip halfway filled in order to use this, so if I have less than halfway, I cannot full auto. As I said, you can only do this once a turn. When using full auto, I add 10 dice to my attack, meaning I get 10 extra dice in order to basically damage with all the bullets I'm spraying at someone in a massive burst of weapons fire. The difficulty of my attack is increased by 2 to hit in the first place, though, so it does make it a little bit more difficult to get all those dice. But I've got a lot of dice, so I'm probably going to do extra damage. It's just not like an insane amount of extra damage. Now, of course, you can change a clip out always, but it requires your full concentration and a full dice pool in order to change it and an action. So that's changing a clip. You have to at least have an action open to do so. You can't split a dice pool and changing it. Now let's talk about the 3-round burst, which I said you could use with the multiple attacks. A 3-round burst is an option that, again, it's a similar type of weapon would have this option. I shoot 3 bullets. I increase my dice pool by 3 for this bonus of 3 bullets, but increases my difficulty by 1. So it's like a lesser trade-off version of the full auto. But that one, I again can use multiple shots with it. Then there's the spray. The spray is a variant version of the full auto. It's using all those bullets except technically against multiple targets. So again, I still get those 10 dice extra that I can roll, but the base difficulty is going to be 5 plus 1 per yard of area I'm trying to swath my destruction out. So like a yard sort of like area like this. Let's say like I'm only doing this 1 yard area here, then I would only get +1 to it, 2 yards, +2, etc., up to 10. We're maximizing the area I can spray bullets into. Now, what I would do is I would get all my successes, and then I would divide the successes however I want amongst the targets within there. I would effectively give dice to every person in there. If there's only one person in there, I could only give at most half my dice to that person then. If there's multiple people, I can of course split it between the 2 of them. If there's more people than you have for successes, you would add them out as you need to, and then you'd run out of them. Now, the big thing about this is I'm having little dices of damage, effectively. I'm getting hit by each of these. I'm doing the base damage to each of these people. But the thing is, it's harder for them to dodge out of the way of this spray of bullets, and it increases the difficulty of their dodges by 2. So it makes it much harder to dodge all these bullets that are flying out. Granted, not a lot of successes, just harder to dodge. Now, there's a chart of basic firearms in the book, which you can use a type of firearms, and they give specific example of them. It says the difficulty for using them, the damage it does, the range it has, the rate it goes at, and of course, how many bullets are in a clip before you'd have to change it. It will also make note if it has the option of full round, 3-round burst, or spraying. Now let's talk melee and brawl complications. Now if you have more than one person you're fighting, you have increased your difficulty to both attack and dodge by 1 for each opponent. This only happens if you have multiple opponents. Flank with an ally around you against someone else and reduce your difficulty by 1. Effectively, you have someone on the other side of them. Both of your melee attacks are a little easier to do. If you get them from behind, effectively getting out and sort of in their blind spot, your difficulty decreases by 2. Now, to stake someone, if you're basically doing a stake in melee combat, it requires the minimum of 3 successes in order to hit in the first place, and you have to do a minimum of 3 damage to successfully stake them in the heart and immobilize them. If you fail on either of these, one you're just missing, and the other you're just basically stabbing them a little bit and doing maybe some damage, but not really getting it in the place you want it to be. Now, the bite does 1 level of damage, and this would be aggravated damage, but you're only able to use the bite if you've successfully grappled someone, which I will talk about in a minute. Now, I will just quickly say right now, there is a chart, two charts in the book, one for melee weapons, one for brawl maneuvers, that you look at for the base difficulty for using any of these and what kind of damage it would do. Let's move on, though. There's claws. Claws, you have to have a protein of at least 2 in order to use claws. They do aggravated damage, though. Now let's talk about grapple. When you attempt to grapple someone, you effectively have to roll your check, and you have to get more successes than their body to get that initial grab onto them. At that point in time, you can either just try to be immobilizing them or biting them if you really want to. But at the start of every turn, then both of you will roll strength plus brawl, and whoever gets more basically gains control of this kind of grapple that you're doing. So the person you're going against could regain it from you if you've already gotten that success. They could take it back, control from you, and then of course choose to do their own thing of those 2 listings, or break up the grapple. I mean, you try to continue to immobilize you or to bite you back, effectively, is what they would try to do. Now, finally, in this area, there's the body slam. The body slam, I'm trying to do a maneuver and kind of knock someone off balance. I would roll my check, and I need 3 successes in order to successfully body slam them. For each one I am less than that, I would take a damage, because I'm sort of not getting right in the hit. Also, if I am failing, I will be falling down to the ground and losing the rest of my actions for the turn if I had any remaining dice pool. So not only can I hurt myself by doing this, I can fall down by doing this. Now, if we successfully body slam them, then a number of things happen to them. First off, they are off balance and getting -2 to all remaining dice pools for the rest of the turn. Effectively, they're kind of off balance. They have to make a dex plus athletics check that if they have to get a number of successes equal to your number of successes plus 3 would be the difficulty, and they have to at least get, of course, 1 success, or they fall down. So again, like if you would get 7 successes, your difficulty would be 10. You know, that's the kind of thing, you're thwonking them down. But they would also take damage equivalent to your strength. So they get a triple threat of hits just from this one body slam that you kind of leaving yourself open a little bit to do. Now there's armor. There's a chart of basic armors in the book. Armor adds, just like a body, to your ability to soak various damages. The thing is, the higher your armor gets, then you start getting penalties to your dexterity. Anytime you would make any kind of dexterity-based roll, you'd have a penalty to your dice pool equivalent to the amount of armor you're wearing. Certain armors give you a lot of defense, but they interfere with your ability to move, and therefore you'd have a huge penalty to it. So it's a trade-off that you would have. You either can have great defense and terrible towards any kind of dexterity-based dice pools, or you can have just a little bit of defense and just an unimpeded dexterity dice pool. So that's it for today. I talked about the remaining complications for firearms and for brawl and melee, and I talked just a little bit about armor to let you know that it exists if you want to take some. In the next episode, I finished talking about the appendices in this book and all the little bits of remaining information you want to take a look at and what's in there that might help you with your game. So if any questions, comments, anything to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, the Empire, and the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, check out my Patreon, link in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.